Good afternoon, economists. Group C, the end of another long day. Let's try and keep this one short. So we're going to look to the economic policy objectives and macroeconomic performance. This is a fairly important lesson in that it kind of sets out everything we're going to do for the next couple of years. And it's kind of, we've almost finished growth now. So we'll do this and we're going to move on to some diagram stuff, okay? No real objectives. All I want to do is just take you through what is macroeconomics and then what we mean by macro objectives and performance, okay? So don't forget, in macroeconomics, we're studying the behavior of an economy as a whole. Aggregate means total, okay? So, yeah, we're looking at everyone's behavior. We're not looking at, like last week, that Boris Johnson thing. Boris Johnson doesn't care about the price of tea in Forest Gate. He cares about the whole economy and everything that we buy and we consume, okay? The issue with the macroeconomy is that obviously there are external factors in play. We can't control like the weather, so we can't control war, stuff like that. So for the UK, we can't control the fact that coronavirus has happened and that Brexit is happening. Well, we could have controlled Brexit if we'd have voted the right way, but whatever. But yeah, the macroeconomics is influenced by things outside of our control. Policies, we're going to start talking about policies. Macroeconomics will look this year at kind of laws, changes in taxation, increase in lowering of interest rates. So if ever I use the term macro policy, it means a law or a kind of policy, an action thing from government or the Bank of England to deal with the total economy. And the key things we're going to look at are inflation, growth, progress in human development, trade and globalization. So basically that sets out what we're going to do. Now, there are 12 core objectives of macroeconomic policy. So policy is what we do as a way of controlling the economy, right? And we're going to do that towards the end of the first year. But when we're changing policy, this is what we're trying to achieve. I just said the word core there, I shouldn't have. These are the 6 core objectives, and the next slide of the PowerPoint are the additional or the sub-objectives, okay? So I'm going to take you through this bit by bit, shouldn't take too long. Number 1, the government wants price stability, okay? It sets a target for inflation of 2%. And we're going to look at our real data in a bit and you'll see quite how crazy things are at the moment. So in terms of inflation, if inflation is a general rise in prices, we are happy as a government to accept 2% plus or minus 1%, okay? So anywhere between 1 and 3% inflation as an objective is absolutely fine. We don't want prices dropping, we don't want deflation, we don't want mass levels of inflation, kind of hyperinflation, whatever you want to call it. So 2% price rises in aggregate, that's across everything that's being sold within the economy, is kind of an acceptable thing. Plus or minus 1, we call that a bandwidth. So we say inflation target of 2.0 with a bandwidth from 1 to 3%. We want GDP increasing, but if you think about last week, we want it to be high but sustainable, fairly obvious. We want unemployment to be falling. Similarly, we want employment to be increasing. If employment falls, employment will increase, etc., etc. But we want unemployment falling kind of the right way. We want people moving into jobs. We don't want people, and we're going to do this in more detail when we look at unemployment, we don't want people without a job to become like what you would call almost economically inactive. People just think, I can't bother to even look for a job anymore, I'm just going to sit at home all day and play the PlayStation, or whatever view we might take negatively of those that are economically inactive. To the bottom left, we want a higher average living standard per person. We could say national income per capita. Basically, each of us should be able to earn more money, have better living standards, simple as that. And you know, that should happen kind of almost equally in some way, but we'll think about that in a bit. We want a stable balance of payments on the current account. Don't forget that's exports minus imports. So basically, if we want a stable balance, you know, if you export more than what you import, you're in surplus. If you import more than what you export, you're in deficit. Deficit doesn't mean debt, it just means that you bring in more from abroad than what you sell abroad, okay? But Britain is in a fairly large deficit. We are not a net exporter. And again, we'll look at that in more detail as we go throughout the year, but the objective will be some kind of stability. And we'll think about how we can achieve stability at a later point. We want an equitable distribution of income and wealth. The government acknowledges that there will be some super rich and some super impoverished people within their nation, but they want that gap closing down. The general problem in Britain at the moment is the rich are getting richer, and they are. The poor are staying poor. With coronavirus, the poor maybe are getting poorer relatively, but we have the benefit system, universal credit, the welfare system to kind of let the poor tick along. So we don't really want the poor getting poorer, but yet we don't really have the poor getting any richer. The rich are getting richer, the poor are staying flat, okay? But obviously the objective of macro policy is that the rich, maybe we tax them a little bit more so they become less rich, and then we give that money to the poor, a bit like a Robin Hood, you steal from the rich to give to the poor, all that kind of stuff. So those are our 6 core objectives. All right, these are our sub-objectives. These things then feed into the core objectives. We want to balance the budget and reduce the national debt. Well, the debt has just gone over £2 trillion, so that's not really happening, but we want to reduce the national debt. It's not clear the national debt, because how do you clear £2 trillion? We want to improve well-being, utility, happiness, all that stuff from this morning. And we also want a better regional balance in the UK economy. If you think about it geographically, Britain is very much north-south. The south of the UK has got London. It's got the central finance, the CBD, whatever you want to call it, the central business district, the central finance sector. All the big banks are located in London, and that's where people want to be. The earnings are higher, houses are worth more in London, etc. But previous governments, David Cameron and George Osborne, the Chancellor at that point, were looking at this kind of northern powerhouse strategy. They wanted to really boost up cities like Manchester, Leeds, just to kind of bring the north to a bit more parity with the south, and to stop highly intelligent people living up north just straight away leaving to go to London. And it's done this HS2 thing, it's a railway connecting Leeds, Manchester, London, which, if anything, makes intelligent northerners get down to London quicker. So how that's making the northern powerhouse, I don't know. The government wants improved access to public services, so there should be more schools, there should be more hospitals, there should be more prisons, there should be more police, etc., etc., etc. How do they do that? Well, they have to increase taxes maybe to pay for that. They want Britain to be more competitive on the global stage, that we should be able to sell things on the global market. We don't really do that with products anymore. We have our competitive advantage in financial services, so mortgages, hedge funds, that kind of stuff. Britain is very good at. We're very sophisticated on the international market at selling those things. And obviously we do want a bit of environmental sustainability as well, that if I can enjoy this growth, this reduction of the national debt, this north-south balance, that the environment should be sustainable for the future, so that my kid can enjoy it, you lot can enjoy it, etc., etc. Okay, so don't forget, ladies and gentlemen, these are our 6 core objectives. These are our 6 sub-objectives. All right, now let's look at the data. Before I show you what's currently happening, let me just take you through what was happening in the good old days, 2014, and then projections for 15 and 16, okay? And these figures, if only this was still happening. Gross domestic product was increasing by 3% year on year from 13 to 14, so GDP was increasing, the economy was growing. GDP, the kind of projected, the forecasted figures, the economy was expected to grow, and it did between 14 and 16. Don't worry about that output gap. Household consumption in 2014, we weren't spending as much as in 2015, but in 2016, it then went back down again. So consumption and people's spending patterns were going up and down, a bit all over the place. Government consumption, government spending money. Well, the government between 14 and 16 was spending less. People were more self-sufficient. People didn't need as much in terms of benefits because the economy was recovering from the 2008 recession. Businesses, 2014, they were spending a lot of money. They were increasing by 8%. In 2015, that increase reduced to 6%, but they were still spending, and they were still spending in 2016. Government investment percentage change, the government in terms of building infrastructure, schools, prisons, hospitals, etc., they were still spending. 2016 a bit less so, because how many more prisons and hospitals did we need? And that balance of trade as a percentage of GDP, we were almost, if you look from 2014 to 2016, 0.6, 0.5, 0.4, we were reducing the size of that deficit, okay? So the economy was looking all right. Inflation, 1.5%, 0.1%, 1.1%. 2015 was the blip, it was the problem at 0.1, but 1.5 and 1.1. If the target for inflation is 2.0% with a bandwidth of 1 to 3, in both 14 and 16, we were within that bandwidth, so the target for inflation was being met. Employment was increasing, average earnings, percentage change. Look at that, the projected average earnings, the pay increases of 3.6% in 16, not bad at all. And then those unemployment rates, we're not going to worry too much about those at the moment. But unemployment at both the labour full survey unemployment was decreasing, unemployment by the claimant count was decreasing as well. Don't worry about what that means. Basically speaking, more people had jobs. Okay, so those were great days, 2015, 2016. Let's look at this. These are the most up-to-date bits of information. I'll be using trading economics more of you as the years go on. As the weeks go on, but let's have a look at Britain today. GDP growth rate, minus 19.8%. It's even gone. So in June 2020, all right, so that's the last time the data was updated, it was minus 19.8%. Before that, GDP growth rate was minus 2.5. So, it's absolutely shot down. GDP annual growth rate year on year, minus 21.5. Unemployment, now 4.1% of the working population. Inflation, 0.2%. That inflation rate is away now from the bandwidth. Prices are increasing too low. Think about what that says about the economy. We're not spending our cash. Firms can't increase their prices. The interest rate is 0.1. It's the lowest it's ever been in my lifetime. The balance of trade on the current account, we looked at that a little bit last week, minus 2,764, down from 20814. Well, actually, the size of the deficit is still reducing. So even though things are really slowing down, we're still selling. Don't worry about the current account to GDP. Government debt to GDP, well, the government's managing to reduce the size of its debt somehow. Oh God, that was in December last year before coronavirus started. We'll get the new figures this December. Business confidence, -1. The last measure taken was minus 87 points. That would have been during peak coronavirus. Seems like businesses were a bit more confident in September. I think that it will worsen off. All this other stuff, PMIs, consumers aren't confident. We're not confident to spend our money. Why, people? Because in Britain in September 2020, there were 446,156 people with coronavirus. There were 42,072 persons that died from it, and 344 recoveries. That's what the data tells us, okay? Even hospital beds, 2.54 beds in December 17, the last date that was taken per 1,000 people. I mean, what are the headlines? Well, I think the headlines have got to be the GDP growth rate, the unemployment rate. It is absolute carnage at the moment. That's what disease can do. All right, now, another thing to highlight. Economic growth, don't forget, is measured by the annual rate of change in GDP. This rate can be forecast. So if you look historically, in 2005, percentage change on year earlier, we had 3% growth. In 2007, we had 2.something% growth. 2009, look at the data, kaboom, we had a recession. Recession, by definition, is a fall in real national output, or GDP, lasting at least 6 months. We often say 2 consecutive quarters, so 3 months plus 3 months equals 6 months. Massive recession, massive recovery. By about 2010, things were looking good. We had another little dip in 2012, but after that, think back to our data, 2013, we got more growth. Then we use a fan chart to show what economists thought could happen in 2015 onwards. The black line is almost a line of best fit, but if the economy was doing really well by 2019, we could have been seeing growth of 5%. Or if the economy was hit by something external, like we said at the start of the lesson, such as coronavirus maybe, which wasn't what it was about in 2019, wasn't it? We will be seeing negative growth of, say, 0.02%. What it doesn't show, that fan, is what actually happened in 2020 if we carried this on, where GDP growth dropping by 19% or whatever it is, we'd have to kind of widen off this scale massively. I mean, it's like economic forecasts are only as good as weather forecasts. They're basically guesses, aren't they? They're basically guesses. But yeah, just thought that's quite interesting to see. What would be really interesting to see is if this time next year we could see this actual data shown by the Office of Budgetary Responsibility, and just see if you think that the GDP drop in 2008-2009's recession was bad. Wait until you see the coronavirus drop. It will be down from -5% to kind of -19%. Absolutely huge. How long the recovery will take as well. This recession recovered very quickly. Within almost a year, we were back to almost pre-recessionary levels. Let's see things on a global basis. Share of world economic output in 2015. These are our PPP figures. GDP, China held 16.86%. So let me say that again. 16.86% accounted for that percentage of total GDP globally. The USA 16%, India 7%, Japan 4.3%, then little old Britain 2.35%. So in 2015, China was the world's biggest economy, although their per capita national income, not so much. Don't forget, this is the total figure, but not everybody is benefiting from that 16.86%. Okay. That's pretty much it. 2 tasks for you, ladies and gentlemen. One's boring, one's fun. Boring task. I like these worksheets. Data analysis for Argentina, Brazil, Chile, Mexico, Peru, Venezuela. Fill in the blanks, rank them by unemployment. I struggled actually. I was, a long day today. I struggled to get these population figures sorted out for Brazil and Peru. You only need the number of unemployed and the percentage population employed. They're the only 2 numbers that you need. Just play with them. You will get that figure. Okay. Bit of data analysis on house prices, and then a correlation activity. If you don't know what correlation means, how strong a link is between something. Okay, get that done, get that submitted in by 7:30 today. The fun activity, and this is the bit that I want to start next week's Wednesday lesson with. You're going to make a nation, state of the nation, all right, by yourself. Give your country a name. I will call mine the Federated States of Slotnik, okay? I'm then going to pick 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 targets from the macro objectives. You choose, all right? You probably want at least 3 core, 4 sub. You're then going to set a target for that economic measure. So in the Federated States of Slotnik, I want GDP growth to be 9% year on year. And I'm going to write that down in the second column. How can it be achieved? The Federated States of Slotnik. We are going to have, massive investment in education. So everyone's going to be highly skilled. We're going to spend loads of money on machinery. The economy is going to be really productive. We're going to have no prisons. Everyone who's naughty is going to go into the army. So we're going to be strong and well fortified. We're going to seek from abroad other highly skilled people to come over, and we're just going to smash out the output. Okay, this is a really stupid task. Okay, it's like tin pot economics. We've only been here for 3 weeks. It's as simple as that. But I just want to see when we discuss this next week, and we might do a little bit of group work on this if COVID allows us, of course, is how accurate your measures are. You see, some of you might say, I want to see, I don't know, unemployment to drop to 0%, that every single person should be working. How are you going to do it? I'm going to set up like Soviet-era work camps. Everyone will get a job, okay? Well, we can debate that. We can see who's a bit communist, who's a bit capitalist. Hopefully that's clear. Basically, you're going to make a country, give it a funny name, give it whatever name, pick 7 economic measures from your choice of 12, give me a target for that measure, and then tell me how you're going to be achieving it. And that's where the amusement will begin. I want you to submit all that as assigned work, but we are going to go through that at the start of next lesson. It could be funny. Just another thing, I will upload this PowerPoint for you. I've given you the web link for tradingeconomics.com for Britain's indicators. If you do want to have a little bit of a play with the economic data, on that link on the right hand side, you've got loads of economic data. Each of these has got sub menus, drop down menus, so you can, I don't know, what can you check? You can check housing prices, home loans, home ownership rates, etc. All right, well, there you go. I said that was short. Hopefully that's short enough. Yep, do your work. See you next Wednesday. Goodbye.